Well, good morning. Here we are, 2016. We survived Christmas. I don't know how many cheese balls, Ben, I put away in 2 weeks. Cheese ball is my weakness. I like to make them, and I like to make them hot. And I put a lot of them away. We finally got all of our trees up. One of our Christmas trees, we didn't even get put up till the 28th, but we got it up. But then we had a nice week. Thank you all for your prayers and support for our missionaries. Last week was kind of tough, putting Taylor on a plane, and she's a long way from home. Okay, in all of our life, when you raise children and you guys have kids, you understand this. You always have that opportunity if something goes wrong, you can just kind of scoop them up. Even when she was in college and got the flu, and Daddy could drive that 45 minutes and just kind of scoop her up and bring her home and take care of her. And can't do that, Steve. She's too far away. She's 18 hours on a plane away from us. Even though through the power of technology we can see her face, she's a long way from home. So we're very thankful for international texting plans so that we can text with her. So in the middle of the night, I get text messages from 2 and 3 in the morning because that's when she's getting up and those kind. That's when she's doing her days in the middle of our night. So we'll be looking forward to having her back home with us next week and hearing all that God has done and everything. But just continue to pray for all of our teams that are out. And I know Nathan and Sheena are almost home, and particularly this team on the other side of the world. Pray for them. It's tough. It's really tough being in that kind of culture, and it's the air is dirty, and the food is different, and so many different things. She's really having her eyes open to other cultures. It's that time of year when we kick off a brand new season of life that we kind of have that idea of, what are we going to do different in 2016? Well, what are we going to change? You always have that resolutions, right? New Year's resolutions, and I don't know if you guys do New Year's resolutions or what that means for you or whatever, but whatever the case is, I bring that word up, and for some of you, it's probably those things. Yeah, I started that on Friday, and I've already dropped the ball on that. I already kind of broke those already. Or maybe you're like me, and the new year really doesn't start till tomorrow. So we can go ahead and enjoy our weekend, and then Monday we go back to school, so we're going to start then. And we have all these ideas in our mind. And here's the thing: it's a good time to do that. It's a good time because this is what happens in January. January the 1st kicks off the season of self-improvement. A lot of times we look back at all the bad food that we ate and all the candy and the sugar and all those things that we've consumed over the holidays, and we start in Thanksgiving just kind of gorging ourselves on ham and rolls and pie and cake and all those things, and then we get to January and it's like, that was all really bad. I never should have done that, but now I'm going to straighten things out, and so we're going to do things, and sometimes it's like it becomes a spiritual self-improvement. It's like, I'm going to try to do better, and I'm going to come to church. And some of you guys may be here today, and maybe that was your New Year's resolution. Maybe you said, I'm going to start off 2016 by going to church. And I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you made that decision. I'm so glad that you made that decision. As we think about this season of self-improvement and all these things that we're going to do, health clubs and vitamin stores, and some of you guys are members of health parks and wellness centers and all those kinds of things, and you're going to show up there this week, and it's going to be like, wow, who are all these new members? Okay, well, they're not new members. They're members all year long, but, they only show up in January because that's when we start doing those things and we really get focused. But what happens is so many times we have these great ideas, and we're going to eat better, we're going to do better, we're going to go, and the feeling kind of starts to wane. And then February comes, and, for me, it's always hard when I'm trying to lose weight and eat good, and then it snows, okay? And then people are home from school and they make cookies, okay? And then they cook chili, and then they make soup and potato salad or potato soup, and they make cornbread, and all these things show up in my house, and then all of a sudden that New Year's resolution that you made to eat this tuna fish, for 3 months, all of a sudden it's really hard, okay? It gets really tough, and so this is what we want to think about as we go through this. This is a good time to reevaluate where we are. It's a really good time to set new goals. But this is what happens. Self-improvement begins to ask ourselves the question, what am I going to do about me? What am I going to do about me? What am I going to do to make my life better? What am I going to do to eat better or get out of debt or whatever I'm going to do about making my life more focused? Well, I want to take us back, and I want to ask ourselves, could there be a better question? Okay? Could there be a better question to guide us in 2016? God's kind of given us a path to follow over these next 13 weeks. We kind of have a 13-week march to Easter. And God's kind of given us a plan to guide that. In these first 3 weeks, we're going to begin to explore a better question. And in order to explore that better question, we're going to go back and we're going to explore an ancient story. A story from the Old Testament about a character that some of you guys may be familiar with. If you're a Bible person or you grew up in church, then you've read this story. Some of you guys have taken a class in this. I've had a seminary class on this guy, and we've gone all through this. For some of you, it may be a brand new story. Okay, and we're going to share this morning the first chapter of a book called Nehemiah. And I want to tell you about who Nehemiah is and how Nehemiah came on the scene. Because the interesting thing about Nehemiah is really not a story about a great miracle or anything like that. Nehemiah is more of a story about vision. Nehemiah is a story about hard work. Nehemiah is a story about dedication. And to understand who Nehemiah was, you need to understand a little bit about Jewish history. All right? About 600 or so years before Jesus. About 600 years before Jesus came on the scene, which we just celebrated the birth of Christ. Back up about 600 or so years, okay? And the Jews were living in the southern kingdom of Judah. And the Babylonians attacked the city and exiled all of the Jews. Now, in case you don't know what exile means, they were taken from Jerusalem and they were carried off into other lands. They were taken back to Babylon. They were taken away. Particularly those people who could do things, okay? Work with their hands. Skilled people, people who could make things and do things, people who could teach and could read and different skill levels. They would take those people away. And then they destroyed the temple, they destroyed the city, and they destroyed all those things. And if you are a Bible person, and maybe you haven't really read too much about Nehemiah, but you grew up reading Bible stories, you probably heard the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Okay, so this story's kind of set around that time frame, and I'm sure if you're a Bible person, grew up in church, then Daniel, okay, Daniel in the lion's den. So this is the context, this is the time frame of when this happens, okay? So Nehemiah is one of those that was taken in exile, and now Nehemiah has kind of made pretty well for himself, okay? Nehemiah is living in the capital city, okay? There really wasn't a capital city, but he was living in the place where the king was. And this is the thing about it. The Babylonians are gone. The Babylonians were destroyed they were taken over, they were conquered by the Persians, okay? So when the Persians conquered the Babylonians, King Cyrus was the king of Persia. And he just kind of issued a decree, kind of told all of the Jews who were living in that area that had been called Babylon. He's like, look, if you guys have been carried into this area by the Babylonians, you all can just go home. Okay? Just go back to your city. Just go back to your land. You guys don't have to stay here anymore. You were captive. You were caught and captured by the Babylonians. We are not the Babylonians. We're different people. You guys can just go on home. Okay? Well, some of them stayed, and so Nehemiah was one who was now working. Okay, Cyrus is gone, and now we have King Artaxerxes. Okay, and King Artaxerxes has Nehemiah, and Nehemiah works for him, and he is living in luxury. Okay, you got to understand, Artaxerxes at this time is the most powerful person on the planet. More money, more wealth, more people, more control than anyone else. So Artaxerxes is here, and Nehemiah is living in his house, okay? Has all that you could ever hope to achieve in wealth that you could want. He's right there in the lap of luxury. But we open the story of Nehemiah with all of that as the backdrop to help us understand what took place. So let's read together. Let's look at the words of Nehemiah in the first chapter as we go through. Everyone, can you put that up? Nehemiah chapter 1 and verse 1. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa. Okay, so verse 1 kind of sets this in history. It says it's important. He's in a place, and this is an event that occurred. Hananiah, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I asked them a question. I asked them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. So he has a conversation with his brother and some others that had been there, and he said, what's going on back home, guys? What's taking place back there? How's it going? There's some people that have gone back, and you guys have been there, so you can kind of give me a report on this, and what are you seeing? What are you hearing? And this is what they said to him. Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. Nehemiah, the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. And this is Nehemiah's reaction. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and I fasted. And then I prayed before God of heaven. And now he records the prayer. He says, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. Oh, listen to what he says. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. He knows that they had done wrong. He knows what they had done. He says, we have acted very wickedly towards you, God. We have not obeyed the commands, the decrees, and the laws that you gave your servant Moses. Even though we knew what we were supposed to do, we didn't do that. And he says, remember the instruction that you gave your servant Moses. He's quoting God to God here. Isn't that cool? Okay, it's kind of different. He's quoting God to God. He says, God, remember what you said? If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. So we know how we got here. We know how this happened. But God, remember what you said. If you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people whom you redeemed by your great strength in your mighty hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Then he says, give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. And then he tags it and tells us all the life that he was living. I was the cupbearer to the king. So what question guides you? What question guides you? Well, here I think is a better question for all of us in 2016. And I think this was the question that guided Nehemiah. What breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? When Nehemiah asked his brother, hey, how's it going back in Jerusalem? How's things going in Judah? And he told him that it was a mess. He told him that it was a wreck, that the city had been destroyed, the walls were destroyed with fire, and it was a mess. Nehemiah didn't say, I hate to hear that. Let me get my checkbook, and I'll cut you guys a check, and maybe if you can take that, and we'll throw some stuff at it, and we got some folks, and I'll start a GoFundMe page for you. And see what we can do to help that. But, I got it pretty good here in the castle, and everything's kind of cool here. And, I got my own thing going on, and, I'm cupbearer to the king. That's not what happened, is it? That wasn't his reaction. No, his reaction was, it broke his heart. You don't sit down and weep over something that you casually hate to hear. You don't sit down and mourn for days over something that you just are a little bit bothered by. Okay? You weep and you mourn for days when something happens, when you see something, when you hear something, and it breaks your heart. So what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? When you look around your community, when you look around your school, when you look around your state, when you look around your world, what breaks your heart? What captures your emotion? What is it when you think about it just stirs you deeply? What breaks your heart? In the same time, you constantly are telling yourself, I can't do anything about that. And then you begin to make excuses, okay? Something breaks your heart or something's really, really tearing at you, something's really digging at you, and you start making excuses. I'm too young, I'm too inexperienced, I'm too old. I'm too old to be doing this. I'm too busy. I'm too disconnected. And then you find yourself saying, God, I really hope you'll send somebody. God, I really hope that you'll send somebody to take care of that, because when I think about that, or when I see that, or when I read about that, I just get tore up. I just get emotional. It's always, you begin to tell yourself it's just always been this way. It's never going to change. And it just breaks your heart. So we're going to start 2016 a little different. Okay? Like I said, God's given us a plan over the next 13 weeks. But for 3 weeks, we're going to sit on this question. You see, because it's a better question than what can I do about me. It's a better question because it's a better question than what can I do about self-improvement. Okay? It's better than self-improvement. Instead of going into this year focused on what am I going to do about me, instead of this year being all about, I'm going to get out of debt, and you should do that. And instead of this year being about, I'm going to lose weight, and I need to lose weight. I know that. But why? Just because I want a better me? You see, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. What if we ask the question, what should be done around me? What should be done around me, and how can I improve myself so that I can be a better servant? How can I improve myself so that I can be better able to do what God has called me to do? So instead of it being self-centered, what if it became others-centered? As we march toward Easter, we're going to be spending weeks on a series called I Will. Okay, some of you may be familiar with that. But before we can say I will, we need to understand why. We need to know what breaks our heart. There's an old Latin proverb that says, what man is a man that does not leave the world better than he found it? Because here's the thing. This is what I know about you, and this is what I know about myself, because I have slipped into this before, and I've been guilty of this, and this can happen, and maybe this is happening to you, and this is what this is what you can figure out. You see, the people that you admire the most, the people that you look up to, the people that you are inspired to name buildings after and to do things that you really hold in high esteem, you don't sit down and say, you know what, we need to put up like a picture or a memorial of this person because they have always maintained their ideal weight. Okay? You probably don't have a fathead picture in your house of somebody that's just like, look at that guy right there, kids. Look at that guy. He has been his ideal weight his whole life. He is just phenomenal. Okay? All right? You just don't do that, do you? You don't have some picture in your house. You don't have like a memorial garden in your home or something, or like something hanging on your where you say, this guy was in $10,000 worth of credit card debt and he got out of debt, and so he is like our hero. Okay? You just don't do that. That's not the person that you do. The people that you look up to, the people that you admire the most, the people that you hold in high esteem, okay, are not people who did those things. But they're people who made the world a better place. And don't get me wrong. Getting out of debt is important. Losing weight and being healthy is important. Okay, I'm not trying to downplay those things. We need to get into shape. We need to eat more healthy. We need to eat our vegetables. Okay, but that's not what inspires you. That's not what inspires you. What inspires you, what really moves you, is people who have made the world a better place, or who have made somebody's world a better place. No one person can change the world, but we can all make a difference. We can all make a difference. And some of us have gifts. Some of us have the ability to change a pretty good slice of the world. And here's the thing. All of us have the ability to find someone, find some place, find some person who is making great strides, who God is using and God is working through to make the world a better place, and we can join them in their efforts. So if you don't, then this is what 2016 is going to look like for you. All right? This is a little bit of a predictor of the future. And this is why I say I understand this, because I've been here before. I can tell you this, because this is what happens. If you don't join in God's efforts to make the world a better place, then this is what your year may look like. You will find yourself sitting in a chair and blaming people. Okay? You will find yourself sitting in a chair and blaming people because it's particularly if you're sitting in a chair behind the television, you can find a talking head that will blame other people, and then you can agree with them. You can go to some place where people are saying that you really disagree with, and then you'll mute it, and then you can do play-by-play for your family. You can just mute and say, you see that right there? That's what's wrong with the world. That's why things are a mess. And so you can just keep on pointing and you can keep on blaming. It's the president's fault. It's Congress's fault. It's the school system's fault. It's the governor's fault. It's the principal's fault. It's my teacher's fault. This is what you need to understand. You can sit there in your chair or at your desk and you can blame the entire world. But blame has never been, nor will it ever be, a strategy for changing anything. Blaming will never be, has it never been, nor will it ever be, a strategy for changing anything. So, here's my challenge. What if we found ourselves in that place where we're blaming others? What if we were to divert that energy? What if we were to divert the energy that we spend? Or maybe you spend all your time on Facebook and you cruise Facebook, and the more of these things that you like, the more of them that will appear in your news feed, and so you're constantly seeing all these things. And so what if you took some of the time that you've spent sharing these things that make you upset, and you just want other people to read them and they'll get upset? What if you diverted that energy and refocused on changing something? Many, many things have been changed and improved by people who saw something, and it broke their heart, and they just started working to change it. Okay, and here's the thing. If you're not a Christian, if you're not a Jesus person, then that doesn't mean that you still can't see something in the world that you live in and go, wow, that's awful. I'm going to try to do something to fix that, or I'm going to try to do something to change that. I can't really tell you what drives you or what makes you want to do that. I don't know. But it can happen, okay? So I'm not going to say that it hasn't happened before and won't happen again. But I will tell you this. If you are a Christian, or an even better way of saying it, if you are a follower of Christ, it's different for you, okay? It is different for you. If you are a follower of Jesus, you make things better. You make things better. It's what Jesus did. Follow him around, okay? If you don't believe me, follow him around. Just go back in the New Testament. They recorded his journeys. They recorded everywhere he went. Everywhere Jesus went, lives were improved, okay? Everywhere Jesus went, things were better. When he saw someone sick, he healed them. If he saw someone hungry, he fed them. Okay? Whatever it was. And people got excited about that. Because that's why they got excited. They said, Jesus is coming. It's not, oh, Jesus is coming. He's going to tell us all that we were doing wrong. No, Jesus is coming and things are about to get better. Life is going to improve. Okay, so if you're a disciple of Jesus, if you're a follower of Christ, you have no choice. You have no alternative. Everywhere you go, everyone that you encounter, everything that you do should be better because of who you are in Him. Because that's who He was. That's who He is. That's what He did. And that's what He does. Jesus' followers help change the lives of others and work to make them better. My child is blind. Well, now he can see. Okay? This person is sick. Well, now he can't walk. Well, now he's walking. Everywhere Jesus went, every person that He encountered came away with a better life. You cannot actively follow Jesus and not make other people's lives better. If you are an active follower of Christ, you will make other people's lives better. You see, Jesus transitioned us from the temple model to the Jesus model. And that was a real flip for the people that He was encountering. Because this is how they functioned. All right? I have a relationship with God. All right? I have a relationship with God in my culture. And if I commit a sin, then I need to go find an animal. Okay? I'll get a goat or a sheep or a dove or something. And I'll go to the temple and I'll sacrifice that animal. If I don't raise it myself, I'll just take some of my money and sacrifice my money and buy it. And I'm going to kill something. And then I'll make a sacrifice. And so now me and God are okay. Me and God are okay. And Jesus come and he flipped that around. He changed. He did something that was really confusing to them because they asked Him, they said, listen, explain to us. What is the biggest deal? What is the greatest commandment? And He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. They're like, yeah, we get that. We understand that because when this vertical relationship is broken, we have to do something. But He said, yeah, don't even, I'm not done yet. The second is like it. Okay? The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That was so foreign to them. It's like, you mean it's not just about us? It's not just about me and my relationship to God? No, it's not. No, it's not. Your relationship to God is equated to your relationship with others. And that was mind-blowing. That was mind-blowing to them. And the reason why He said that is because every person that you encounter is made in the image of God. And God cares about people. And if God cares about people, then you should care about people. It's how He made us. It's how He designed us. God cares about people. Your love for God then becomes equated to your love for others. And when you follow Jesus around in the Gospels, that's what you see. It's a very important teaching of Jesus. And this is what He taught us, and this is what you have to understand, is that people have inherent value. People have inherent value, not ascribed value. And they didn't understand that in their culture because their relationship, God was here, and then you had wealthy people, and then you had middle-class people, and then you had poor people, and then you had slaves, and you had tax collectors and sinners, and you had all these categories of people. So there were better people and not so good people. And Jesus said, that's not it. Just because you're created in the image of God means that you have inherent value. Some of you guys sang that when you were a kid. You didn't even get it. Okay? You remember this? Red, yellow, black, and white. They are precious in His sight. He said it didn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your economic status is. But in that culture, it did matter. Men, women, children. In that culture, okay, it was a hierarchy. Remember when the kids were playing with Jesus and playing around? The disciples were like, crazy kids, get out of here. Jesus said, no. Bring them to me. They have inherent value. As a matter of fact, if you don't become like one of them, you can't even make it into the kingdom of heaven. I'm like, what? You see? They have inherent value. It was such a mind-blowing experience for them. To Jesus, we're all created in the image of God. And here's the thing. Over and over and over in our culture, it has been Jesus' followers that have made the difference. It has been Jesus' followers who made the difference. Okay? The message of the gospel. Okay? The message of the gospel. From the abolition of slavery hundreds of years ago. Okay? From that idea that was not right. Okay? From that idea of understanding that was not correct. Even brings us the song Amazing Grace. Okay? And to current time and current day and present day, when we deal with the issues of sex trafficking globally with children and women and Christians, disciples, Jesus followers, bring that to the forefront. We bring that to the forefront globally and say, look, this is not right. This is not acceptable. And it's Jesus followers that put that into the headlines. It's Jesus followers that bring that to the front news and make a difference in other people's lives. For God so loved the world, all of us, that He gave His one and only Son, that so whoever would believe in Him would not perish, but have eternal life. Jesus taught us that we do not assign importance to people. People are inherently important. And that was not the world that Jesus came into. So when it comes to what breaks our heart, it can be regardless to nationality, poverty level, race, or anything. Folks, this idea, this Jesus concept, was written into the very DNA of America. It was written into the DNA of who we are. In the first draft of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson wrote these words. This was the first draft. We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable. Sacred and undeniable. And Benjamin Franklin came along and said, let's shorten that. Okay? And you know it to say that we hold these truths to be self-evident. That if you just sit and think about it, that you say, yeah, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator, by God, with certain unalienable rights. You see, it's written right into our DNA. It's written to who we are as a nation because that idea comes from Jesus. It was a massive idea that was introduced by Christ into a world that knew it not. So, what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? Nehemiah's broken heart was by divine design. It was by divine design. You see, Nehemiah didn't know that when God stirred his heart, when that hit him, when he said, what's going on back in Jerusalem, guys? What's going on back in it's bad. God was stirring in his heart. And Nehemiah didn't know it. He had no way of knowing that 70 years prior to God stirring in Nehemiah's heart, Nehemiah stirred the heart of one named Zerubbabel. And he said, go back and start building the temple. And then 14 years before God stirred Nehemiah's heart, He stirred the heart of a man named Ezra. And he said, go back and teach the people. Teach the people the law. Get the temple worship started back. And then He stirred Nehemiah's heart. And He broke his heart. And He said, go back and establish my city. And all of that, see, this is how God works. He was stirring Zerubbabel, He was stirring Ezra, He was stirring Nehemiah, And He was doing this 440 years to prepare the temple, to prepare the city, to prepare the place where Jesus would step onto the planet, where Jesus would walk into and declare who He was, and that He was here to do for us what we could not do for ourselves. And why? Why did God send His Son? Why did Jesus have to come? Why did He have to die? Because our sin, my sin, broke God's heart. It broke His heart. It broke His heart. What breaks your heart? You have no idea what hangs in the balance of the decision that God has placed on your heart. You have no idea what. You have no idea who. You have no idea what hangs in the balance of your decision. One of the things that Troy and Kim do, pastor over at East Hartford, is they have foster children. And that takes a special person. And there have been conversations that I've had with him. He tells me all the things that they have to do and all that it takes and everything that they have to be involved with. And there are times that I've had to tell him, you just need to give that up. You just don't have time. I mean, it's killing you. It's killing your wife. It's killing you. You just don't have time for that. But he can't. Why? Because God has broken his heart. God has broken his heart for the children that shares his home. Back in 1996, I had a full-time job as a teacher, and if any of you know anything about being an ag teacher and an FFA advisor, it's a full-time job. Okay? It's a full-time job. And I began to feel that God was calling me to pastor. And then as I began to say yes to the calling of being a pastor, he called me to pastor a church called Brooklyn over in North Butler County. And I was like, God, I don't have time for this. But when I went there and I met those people, I had other pastors, guys that I looked up to, people that were mentors, people that I would go to and say, what should I do or how should I handle the situation? I had these kinds of guys looking at me saying, you don't need to go there. You don't need to go there. But it broke my heart. The people of that church broke my heart. And after I went there, I understood why. In January of 1999, I was driving home from a funeral of an infant. My heart was already broken for that family. And I received a phone call, or I called my grandmother as I was meeting fire trucks on our way home. And the self-proclaimed missionary of Lucifer was his personal quote. This man had broken into our church building and busted the glass out of the windows on the altar, had poured gasoline down the front pews of the church and lit it on fire, and burned it to the ground. And I stood there next to Adam Wright. Adam was on the fire department at the time. And I stood there next to Adam while it was still on fire. It was still burning. It was falling in. It collapsed into the basement and it was on fire. And I'm going to tell you, as a pastor, as a person who grew up in church and grew up in that church, and that was the first church building that I took Taylor to when she was just a baby, and she was only just about 3-4 years old at the time. It broke my heart. It absolutely broke my heart. The last thing I needed was a building project. The last thing I needed was to become a construction manager for a church building project. I did not have time for that, okay? I was already pastoring a church and already teaching and all those things. But it broke my heart. It absolutely broke my heart. And I begged God, please, let me do this. Let me do this. And he did. What a blessing. What a blessing. Was it challenging? Yeah. Yeah. Did it cost me? Oh my gosh. My gosh. Then 10 years later, my uncle called me on Thanksgiving Day. And he told me the story of a search for a pastor for a church called Ridgecrest. And I hung up the phone, and my heart was broken for that church. My heart was broken for that church. And so I went there. And God blessed me again. It was a bigger church, more time, more people. Did it cost me? Yeah. And then 5 years later, my phone rang again. And I began to become familiar and already knew about Living Faith. I already knew about this church. And I saw what God had done here. I saw the building. I saw the people and all the things that were taking place and how long that you had been without a pastor. And God broke my heart. And I said, God, that church is twice as large as the one I'm in now. Did you not get the memo? I'm still teaching. I'm still an FFA advisor. I have a farm. That church is 30 miles away from my house. But He broke my heart. This question is scary. Okay? This question is scary. Because when your heart becomes broken, when God places something on your heart and your heart becomes broken, it's going to cost you something. Okay? It doesn't come without sacrifice. It's going to cost you something. And sometimes it's much more precious than monetary things. It's time. It's time with your family. Okay? It's time, it's time that you have to give away. It's things that you have to give up. Okay? It's things that you have to give up. There's things that I'm very passionate about, that I grew up being very passionate about. I love to hunt and I love to fish and I love to do all those things. And a lot of those things I've had to set on the back burner. Okay? I love them. I love them. I had a pastor, when I first said I'm surrendering to ministry, he said, you're going to have to quit all of those things. I said, oh no. No. That was in 1996. Okay? And I didn't. God didn't call me to do that. If you ask me how much time I spend now doing those things, it's very minimal. But it hasn't bothered me any. Okay? It hasn't bothered me. God has called me to do what He's called me to do because it breaks my heart. And here's the thing. Here's the payoff. I can't tell you how much it blesses me. Okay? How much of a blessing that I get to know that someone's life is better. To know that someone's life has been changed. That someone's life is better because of the decision that I made. Because I had no idea what hung in the balance. I had no idea whose life it was going to affect. And to this day, I still don't know the ministry that I have. I don't know whose life it affects. Every now and then I get little pieces. Okay? I get little pieces. But I have no idea. I just know that God's broken my heart for the church. And what breaks your heart? Here's the deal. I think we need to lose weight and get out of debt. Okay? A lot of us need to do that. But this is a better question to guide us in 2016. What breaks your heart? You don't have to become an activist, okay? You don't have to get out here on the street and hold posters. You don't have to quit your job. That's not what we're talking about. You just need to ask yourself, what breaks my heart? What has God put in your heart? What is it when you see it? It's like, I just can't. Andy Stanley, the pastor at North Point in Atlanta, his wife, Sandy, they're foster parents too. I didn't know this. I heard this week. This is something that she told me. This is very profound. She said, when I come to the end of my life, she said, it would be the most wonderful blessing if every foster child, a child without parents, a child that doesn't have a home, could line up and come to me and thank me for making their foster experience a better experience. And I think that's powerful. And how we started today with that dash, that's how we live our lives. We live our lives in a way to make other people's lives better. So for the next 3 weeks, sit on that question. Sit on that question. If you say, well, there's nothing that breaks my heart, then you need help. Okay? So sit on it for 3 weeks. We're going to talk about this for 3 weeks till you maybe get tired of it. What breaks your heart? And then we're going to give you an opportunity to say yes. We're going to give you an opportunity to say, I will make a difference in other people's lives by doing a variety of things. I will make a difference. I will make a difference in someone's life. Maybe you're here this morning and your New Year's resolution was to start back in church in 2016, and I've just really turned your life upside down this morning. Okay? Welcome. We are glad that you're here. We are glad that you're here. Maybe you're here and you just need to reconnect. What's breaking your heart is that you've lost that connection with Christ. You just don't have it. It's just not there the way it needs to. Maybe you said yes to Him. Maybe you've asked Him into your heart and He saved you. I can assure you that He will never let you go. But there are times in our lives that it can feel like He is so far away. And your heart is breaking because you're disconnected. Your heart is breaking because you haven't spent time in prayer. Your heart is breaking because you haven't spent time in His Word. Your heart is breaking because you're just not connected. You can change that this morning. He's never gone far away. He's right there where He's always been. Whatever your need is this morning, ask yourself the question, what breaks my heart? Let me pray for you. Father, we love you. We thank you. We thank you for Nehemiah's obedience. But most importantly, we thank you that you broke his heart. Father, that he expressed emotion over the broken walls of his home city. And that you called him and you inspired him to go and to make others' lives better. Father, in this room today, in this place this morning, there are many that are followers of Jesus. Father, but there may be some here this morning that call themselves a Christian, but they're destined to begin to spend 2016 blaming everything around them and not doing anything about it. Father, it's my prayer that change today. Every time they begin to spend time blaming and being upset with the way things are going in our world or our country, Father, that you'll just kind of tap on their heart and say, why don't you spend this time making someone else's life better? There's something, Father, that's tugging at us. Maybe for some of us, we've just kind of put that thought out of our mind and say, I just don't have time. I don't have enough money. I'm too busy. You've given us all the same amount of time. But for some of us, you've broken our heart for that thing, that person, that child. Father, only you know what that is. So, Father, as you communicate to us, help us to begin to open our minds. Father, that as we seek to be better, as we seek to improve ourselves, that we don't do that just because we want to be better. We do that so that we're better equipped to make the world a better place. Be with us now, Father. Guide us in this time of invitation and reflection. If there's someone here that has become disconnected, someone here that's just not been a part of your church the way they need to be, Father, I pray that they come back. They're always welcome. Father, we pray this morning that you'll just touch our hearts. Call us, Father. Break our hearts. We ask it in Jesus' name.